music to the noise, yeah, the mess we make. Machine Pun Kelly get caught in the fake. Facts and logic with a twist of jest. Strip it down to truth, yeah, forget the rest. Humor blows the lies right out of the park. Look beyond the shadows that set the dark. Sparks of laughter fire up the night, bringing clarity when they blur the fight. Cut through the chaos, yeah, the tangled lies. Fun Kelly with a set of clear eyes. Truths and jokes gonna rock this show. Step into light where the real facts glow. Step into the light. Let's go.
Hello, and a very happy Friday to everyone. I've decided that on the green screen thing, I'm just going to have to figure it out. But in the time being, I had it like draped over here and it was trying to do stuff. And I've tried different things and none of it's working. I don't know what to do. But for right now, just so you know, my weight bench and all my weightlifting equipment is back behind that, and which is why I have it covered and why I just don't have an empty, like just have like what's back there. But everything I do doesn't seem to work, so I don't know what to do. Anyway, I hope you're having a happy Friday, and I hope you are ready to jump into another episode of the Punch Show. And Pocket brain here is right on target. We are going to talk about who really has TDS, and I'll get to all that when I start into the clips. But the idea that somehow if you have rational thought backed by facts, you're deranged, but if you like obsequiously kiss the ring, then you're like normal. Like, let's talk about who the really, really, really deranged people are. And it's like they're elevating the level of derangement. So the clips today are just off the charts nut job. But before we get into that, wanted to talk a little bit more about if you are subscribed to my channel, you may have noticed, or if you watched the podcast yesterday, I've been going into the Supreme Court history of immigration rights. And first, as I've said before, I don't like pretend to come on here knowing everything. I try to learn things I don't know about. I actually, ironically, do my own research. So I've been studying, like instead of asking hypothetically whether or not due process is a right afforded to immigrants, I've been doing some research on it. What has the Supreme Court said? Like, obviously, the Fifth Amendment says that if you're a person, you have due process rights. But for some people, for some reason, that's not enough. So I've been looking into the Supreme Court rulings, the history of Supreme Court rulings on immigrants. And the first one I did was on Yick versus Higgins, which was a Chinese launderer who basically was denied his business because he was a Chinese immigrant. And the Supreme Court said, no, you can't do that. You can't, like just deny somebody their due process. And, the due process here, due process says you cannot be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process. And the due process here was being denied of property of their business license, and they were giving out these business licenses only to non-Chinese people. All right, because there was like, if you didn't know this, like around 1880, a lot of Chinese people started coming over here. There was a lot of anti-Asian racism. So when you look at these cases, they're usually against Asians. So the first one was that one. Then they passed a law in 1891, I want to say, that was basically like, you can't come here if you're a Chinese person. And then there was a guy named Wing Wang, or Wang Wing, I'm sorry, who they sentenced to 2 months of hard labor for being an illegal immigrant. And they did that without any trial. And the Supreme Court decided that even if you're an illegal immigrant, you still have a right to a trial before you can be imprisoned. And that's very pertinent to things like Abrego Garcia, who has been sentenced to prison for the rest of his life without a trial, without a release date, without nothing. Like, it just happens to be in a foreign prison. And you can say, well, he's from El Salvador. But there was, like, that's just post hoc justification. He was not deported to El Salvador. He was imprisoned in El Salvador. So I don't care about the distinction between being imprisoned in Detroit, like Wang Wing was, or being imprisoned in El Salvador on America's dime. He wasn't convicted of anything in El Salvador either. This is not about an El Salvadoran being extradited to El Salvador for crimes he committed in El Salvador. No, this is about America paying to imprison someone illegally in a different country to evade the right to due process. So you can't, so the first one says that immigrants have rights, that have due process rights. The second one says even illegal immigrants you can't imprison without a trial. Today's edition, which will be coming out soon, is called Yamataya versus Fisher, and that was a case where a Japanese lady was deported without any kind of real hearing. Like, there was an officer that heard her case, but she didn't get, like, there was no translator there was no attorney there, and so there was this case that she sued and said, my rights to due process were denied. And the Supreme Court ended up ruling that even if you're being deported, the process is different. It's a different kind of trial. It's a different kind of process because it's not a criminal proceeding. It's a civil proceeding, but you're still entitled to a process. And that process has changed over the years and has, become more refined. But that process exists. Even if you're an illegal immigrant, you are entitled to a process. And the Trump administration, for not just Kilmar Abrego Garcia, but for all 300 people that they deported, that process has been denied and ignored. And in the Yamataya thing, that I think there are 3 things that you are entitled to with due process. 1, you're entitled to a defense. 2, you're entitled to notice. Like, there has to be sufficient notice. And then 3, you're entitled to actually be able to understand it, right? So if you speak a different language, you have to be told in your own language that you are being deported so far in advance, and then you're allowed to go to a immigration hearing and defend yourself, right? Those 3 things are fundamental, and they are established by Supreme Court precedent. This is not, like, I get so tired of these polls, these opinion polls about it. It does not matter what your opinion about whether or not somebody is entitled due process is. The Supreme Court has a history of saying, if you are a person in the United States, before you're deported, even if you're here illegally, you have a right to an immigration hearing. where you can defend yourself. You have a right to notification. And even this Supreme Court decided that even those people that were deported illegally, not deported, renditioned illegally, did not get due process because they did not have sufficient notification before they were notified. They didn't have a chance to defend themselves in a court, and they didn't have any kind of representation. So all those things are right. Okay, let's stop talking about how if somebody crosses the border illegally, does not mean they are not persons anymore. And see, because somebody, and in this case, we are talking about people who are accused of crossing the border illegally. Yeah, and maybe they have, and maybe they should be deported. Maybe they shouldn't be here legally. But that is moot. They do not, you don't get to send them off to die in a foreign prison because you said they crossed the border illegally. And I was thinking about this morning. The irony of the Second Amendment crowd, like crowing for decades about what's going to protect us from an overreaching government, is now defending the government, sending people off to die in foreign prisons without a trial because the government said so. I'm sorry. The trust me, bro arguments from the Trump administration are insufficient to give people death sentences in foreign gulags that have been condemned by the United States for their lack of human rights. Like, look into this prison that they're being sent to. And I'm not joking. The UN has literally condemned this prison for its lack of human rights. Look at the picture with the dog killer in front of the victims of the Trump administration, dressed down to their underwear. That's illegal. That picture is illegal. You're not allowed to do that. So anyway, I'll have part 3 of this series up later today, probably within an hour or two after I'm done with this podcast. I hope you guys can watch this because I think it's really, really important that we not just make the due process applies to persons argument. And I mean, like, that is absolutely a valid argument. But I think we need to point out to people, this is not a hypothetical question as to whether or not it applies to citizens only or non-citizens or legal residents. All of this is settled law. And the Supreme Court has already ruled on these things. So when people, say these things to you, and, like, if you can just say, well, what about Yamataya? Like, we need details. And, I think sometimes we, out of frustration or whatever, and there might be some people that, like, most people maybe are just going to be like, no matter what you say. It's not like I haven't had experience arguing with MAGAs. But as I've said over and over again on this program, you're looking for the 1 or 2%, because 1 or 2% will change election results. So anyway, let's move on. Hi, Debbie. Not sure why Trump chose it. I'm not sure which thing. But anyway, I think this is the first time I've seen you comment on the program. So welcome to the program, and thank you for your comments. Appreciate you watching. And Joe's here. Joe is a regular. Joe is a good dude. I like Joe. And Pocket Brain is also a repeat user. So those are the commenters we've had. I think we've got some more viewers than that. But anyway, let's go on to the crazy talk. And like, some of this stuff is so so insane. If you were to look up insane in the dictionary and you were to show them the pictures of these people, they would just be like, it'd be, I don't want to have anything to do with that guy. That guy is truly crazy. So, all right, let's go to the first one. This is Kelly.
But what I'm hearing from small businesses is they want that level playing field. They know that this is a short-term situation that is going to be replaced by a much brighter long-term. Whether I've been in small businesses that are hardware stores or small manufacturers, they are excited about Made in America. They understand the emergency we were under because we no longer made our own chips, our defense products, medical devices, things like that that are life or death, that we need to make sure we're investing in all of that. And that's what's happening right here in New York and across this country. Yeah. And what I'm excited to see is the energy behind it. We're working to bring the skilled workforce to bear because there's so many needs in manufacturing. Manufacturing has really become an extension of technology. We need more of that in this country. And it's really exciting.
When you think about
so this is like, oh yeah, all those small businesses are just thrilled with the tariffs. And this is just like completely made up. Kelly, I don't believe you. I don't believe you've been talking to all these small business owners. I think you're lying. I don't believe you. And you're, like wave of the hand. I've been talking to these people and they're really excited. No, they're not. The small business owners that are making manufacturing products are actually going to be going out of business, and they're really worried about this. They're really, really concerned about this because half the products that we have put tariffs on are going to are things they need to manufacture their stuff. We're manufacturing either raw or processed materials that they need to manufacture their products, which means the cost of their business is going up. They don't know what's going on with Donald Trump's yo-yoing the tariff stuff every day. And so they want, like, you can't say, okay, well, this 20% tariff, or, this country, has a 10% tariff on it. So now we, and this country doesn't. So let's try and find a cheaper workaround or whatever. You can't do that because by the time you find a cheaper workaround, it's the next day. And Donald Trump has changed his mind again. I promise you, there is not one like actual small business manufacturer out there that is excited and happy about this. And what are we gonna like this idea, this notion, this crazy insane thought that all of a sudden in just a couple of weeks all these manufacturing things that like we're going to start like mining our own rare minerals, processing them and shipping them off to factories to be, like this is just insane. There is no rational, logical thought process by which you can get to where this benefits American manufacturing. It's actually hurting American manufacturing because it makes it more expensive. It makes us less competitive. And meanwhile, all the other countries in the world are sitting around and they're saying, well, like, let's just bypass the United States because that level of insanity we just can't deal with. And that is literally what they're doing. Like, they've literally had conferences. And I know people hate the overuse of the word literally. So I am not overusing the word. I mean, it has actually happened. They have actually had discussions with each other how to shut the United States out of everything because they just can't work with us. So yeah, this is not end well. And Kelly Loeffler can talk about her made up small businesses that she's talked to as much as she wants to, but she can't name one. You want to put somebody that owns a small business on there, and you want to, then go ahead. But you notice, no small business people are on there talking about this stuff. It's only people talking about how they've talked to people. And, especially when it's a people that have such a history of lying through their teeth and shilling to obsequiously kiss Trump's ring. Yeah, I'm sorry. I just don't believe you. You're just lying. Like these people, they just lie. Oh, speaking of lying.
You look up and you say, you must be kidding. How can someone not have dealt this? Last year,
Doge
almost a
goes
quarter
in.
million people were registered in the marketplaces who shouldn't have been.
Guys, so Doge goes in. What's the expectation for savings from Doge? Give us a number today based on $1.5 trillion in spending.
We've already discovered, just since I've been here, and even before, since the inauguration, tens of billions of dollars that is of fraud easily taken back. We just stopped recently a couple $100 million going out the door that would have actually been taken by folks, and who knows where they are taking the money when they get it. These people are not involved in legitimate activities. So the $31 million that I know of last week is a great example of this. We stopped the money by using new technology, by modernizing how Medicare and Medicaid works, from even leaving the building, because we knew something was fishy about these bills. And these aren't just small little mistakes. These are organized criminal efforts to hurt our country, some of them launched by foreign countries.
So, a whole lot of weird shit there. But let's start with the first thing he said, which is there are almost 250,000 people on ACA that we found out shouldn't have been. There are 44 million people on ACA. So what is that's like what, 0.5% of people that are on ACA they found out shouldn't have been, or is it anyway? 44.44. Yeah, 0.5% of people that are on ACA shouldn't have been. And that doesn't actually mean they shouldn't have been, the specifics of ACA, it's kind of there's this, what it does is it captures a group of people that make too much money to qualify for or to qualify for assistance, and or they don't make enough. How do I put this? It's for people that are in the pocket to where they don't have they don't have insurance through their employer, and they don't have enough money to pay for insurance on their own, but they make too much money to qualify for Medicaid. So there's this like pocket, right? So there are some people that maybe started off the year not making enough money, and then they started making, to pay for it on their own, and they made more money. Or there's people that lost their jobs and made less money. Like there is always going to be some people that are in transition. Like the fact there's only 250,000 that they could find that didn't qualify for it shows me that this is like airtight. I'm actually surprised it's only 250,000. And he says almost 250,000, and doesn't say out of 44 million. Like that is that's a sliver. And then he like starts going on about this is some kind of scheme from foreign countries. They've always got to take things to like, oh, this is like America is being attacked by the rest of the world. And what foreign countries? Show us, man behind the curtain, Dr. Oz. Show us what foreign countries. What foreign countries are doing this? It's like they just and by the way, if you haven't seen it, there was a Times article yesterday that actually exposed I think I don't remember what the amount of money was, but it's like when you count the amount of revenue that was lost, like because you like with Doge, they were like, oh, we're going to save $2 trillion, and then it was like, oh, we're going to save $1 trillion, and then they're like, oh, we're going to save $150 billion, and then there's some review of how much they saved, and it's like actually like $300 million or whatever, and then well, now it comes out that it's actually costing money. Like Doge is adding to the debt, and it's also taking away actual things that people need in order to add to the debt. So, yeah, let's just stop with this. We're saving money, Dr. Oz. You're as worthless and useless as your supplements. This is what I mean when I say they've gone past the crazy talk. They just make stuff up and defend it. All right. Here we go.
Continue to lack support from NATO allies in your goal of obtaining Greenland. How will you proceed if you don't get that support?
Well, Greenland's going to be interesting, but that's for another day. I think we need that for international peace.
What are you expecting of your
And if you
allies?
don't have that, I think it's a big threat to our world. So I think Greenland's very important for international peace. Yeah, please go ahead.
What does that even mean? This is what I mean. Like, this is crazy talk. How is the U.S. owning Greenland an issue for international peace? And why is it nobody like follows up and says, why are you such a rambling lunatic? Are you suggesting that we're going to conquer Greenland? We're going to go to war with NATO? You realize Denmark is part of NATO, right? And that Denmark owns Greenland. That if we try and take over NATO, we are going to start a world war with Europe, where we're the bad guys. So why are you talking about we need Greenland for world peace? No, you need to shut up about Greenland. Like, it's just insane. That's the level of insanity. Like, how, and you've got right-wing MAGA, so-called journalists asking him about this as though it's a legitimate question. There's nothing legitimate to this. This is just when I was a little kid, when I was like 5, and I would look at a map, and I was like thinking, we always talked about manifest destiny and how cool it was. Like, before I learned like what history was and how the rest of the world worked, and I was like a little child, and I would look and I would think, I'd read these books about, like kings that would go out and they'd conquer territory and they'd be heroes and expand their country like, King Arthur did. I think that's so awesome. Wouldn't it be great if we owned Canada? Oh, and then we could take Greenland too. Maybe we take Mexico. And, at the time, like the USSR was the largest geographic country in the world. And so you'd sit there and you'd think, gee, how could we become the largest geographic country in the world? Right? I was like 5, though. I was a child. Donald Trump is the president of the United States. He's like a septuagenarian, and he's sitting there pontificating over this same just childish, ooh, I want to be the biggest country in the world nonsense. No, we don't need Greenland for world peace, Donald. And why is the media, like, where is the right-wing media's line? Like, where do they draw the line? What, like, is anything Trump says just automatically sanctioned by you? Where is your integrity? Where is your credibility? Where is your, like, shame? Like, you're talking about starting a world war so Donald Trump can, like, look at the map and be happy. It's like, this is crazy talk elevated to, like, several levels of crazy. Can you, I mean, like, what do you remember in the debates when we talked about whether or not we should invade Greenland or whether or not we should force Greenland to become they don't want to become a part of the United States. Greenland, if you asked Greenlanders what Greenland wants, Greenland, more than anything, would like to just be its own country. It doesn't like being owned by Denmark either. But at least according to the polling I've seen. But I don't think that they want to be, like traded off like a can of Spam to the United States. And what about, remember when he wanted to trade Puerto Rico for Greenland? Like, what a nut job. Why is he even in an authority to say anything? Okay, and now we've got the Russian asset.
So you found people who were who seem motivated to undermine the president.
Yeah, when we look at the examples that I've seen just in the short time that I've been in this position, what they consist of is essentially very selective leaks to their friends in the propaganda media that twist and manipulate intelligence directly to undermine the president's policies and his aggressive work to keep the American people safe.
So does that third person know that you're zeroing in on them?
I don't know if they know, but these are the first 3 investigations. We are referring to the Department of Justice. There are more that we are continuing to, investigations we're continuing internally.
Can you give me the nature of what they did, and will we know their names?
I can't get into detail now because of the criminal investigations that the FBI will be conducting. But in each one of these examples, I can tell you we know that the intent, based on the result that we've seen through their leaks to the Washington Post, the New York Times, and other outlets, Huffington Post and others, has been directly to undermine President Trump and the work that he's doing.
And what's the problem with that? You're more worried about the fact that somebody doesn't like Trump than a drunk who is serving as Secretary of Defense is sharing national security information, whether you want to admit that it's classified or not, on Signal on a private phone. And you're too busy investigating why somebody leaked that was happening, than the fact that was happening. Maybe the person who is leaking is actually concerned about the national security of the United States. But what would Tulsi Gabbard, who the last time I checked was the director of national insurance, or the director of national security, what would she care about national security? Like, shouldn't your concern about national security be that the Secretary of Defense is sharing imminent battle information with his family on Signal? Like, why aren't you investigating Pete Hegseth? Like, instead of whoever was like, this is really, really scary. Like, somebody did leak that he was doing that. But that person is not the issue. If you're so worried that the person leaked that he was doing that, but you're not worried about the fact he was doing that, that's like prosecuting somebody for reporting a murder. But not reporting the murderer, or not prosecuting the murderer. It's insane. They talk about weaponizing the Justice Department. That's all they're doing. These people, this is, you see what I mean? It's like they're taking crazy to a whole other level. Like, it's like there's a whole new boss level here of just, I don't even know how to respond to this stuff. Can you imagine if under Biden, Secretary Scott had been sitting there sharing the information about Afghanistan withdrawal with his friends and family on a private signal chat on his private phone when they have their private phones. And you've got Pete Hegseth toting his wife around to all of this stuff, or is his wife toting him around? I don't know who's in charge in that relationship. Is she the real Secretary of Defense, or is he? I don't know. It seems like he can't go anywhere without her permission. And I'm not saying that like in some misogynistic way. If it were, Hillary Clinton dragging Bill Clinton around to every Secretary of State meeting, I'd have the same reaction. And the right-wing media would too. But at least Bill Clinton has a security clearance. Why is that not an issue to you, Tulsi? Or has Vladimir not told you that you should be worried about that? All right.
At the meeting yesterday with AG Bondi, with about 15 cabinet secretaries, that just shows you the importance, and sadly, that there is anti-Christian bias in the government. And so you had Secretary Rubio, Secretary Hegseth, you just had Robert Kennedy, who were all reporting on all the anti-Christian bias they have found thus far.
Already.
So Rubio went and asked for, tell us what anti-Christian bias you find. In just 7 days, they found 150 plus instances.
And yet, you can't really name one. This is one thing they like to do. Have you noticed this? That they will talk about like the number of things, but never a specific thing. And this is actually kind of a thing from Trump's playbook, where he'll just make up a number. And then you talk about whether that number is realistic. Like, has it really been 150, or has it just been 5? But as soon as you start discussing the number, then you start accepting tacitly that it happens. What is anti-Christian bias even supposed to mean? Like, what is anti-Christian bias? If I accept trans people exist and your interpretation of the Bible says they don't, does that mean there's an anti-Christian bias? Is an anti-Christian bias the denial of a pro-Christian bias? Because that's what it seems like they think an anti-Christian bias is. If you do not cater everything into a pro-Christian philosophy, then somehow you're anti-Christian. Like, what if, where is the investigation on an anti-Muslim bias, or an anti-Hindu bias, or an anti-Buddhist bias, or an anti-Jewish bias? Why is it only an anti-Christian bias? Because I don't think that exists. I think that is a thing you made up, which is why it's not even a thing that you can really define. What do you mean by anti-Christian bias? It's just more crazy talk. It's all crazy people right now. Everyone involved in the Trump administration is quantifiably insane. I mean, like, anybody else sick of the stupidity and the insanity and the craziness and the nut jobbery and just everything? Like, you wake up and you're like, today might be different, and you hope, and then it's like, nope, more stupidity, insanity just coming out of the Trump administration. There was a sign I saw at one of the protests that I just, like, man, reached into my soul and pulled it out and made it into a sign. And it said, less than 6 weeks in, and I'm using the F-bomb like a comma. And I felt that. I felt that, although they didn't say the F-bomb. I'm saying the F-bomb here for the sake of my wife who doesn't want me dropping F-bombs. Okay. Let's go to the next one.
You spoke with President Xi. Have you spoken to him since the tariffs? When did you last
I don't want to comment on that, but I've spoken to him many times.
Okay, I thought that was a little. I think maybe I downloaded the wrong link. Anyway, right now he's denying. He's saying that he spoke with China. China is denying he spoke with them. And China is saying they're lying. And there's all these clips where, right-wing pundits are very, very, very upset that we would take China's word over his. And it's like, they're an enemy of the United States, and you're taking his word over the president of the United States. And it's like, didn't you take Putin's word over our own intelligence agencies on whether or not they assisted Trump to win in 2016? Like, I'm sorry, your outrage is not heard here because we know it's fake. We know it's made up. We know you're just being another obsequious psychopath. I'm sorry, I don't believe the guy who has documented, who has 50,000 lies documented. Like, maybe the problem is if you're concerned that we would rather believe China than Trump, maybe you should be concerned with why. We have a president who just, if Donald Trump said the sky was blue, I would run outside to see what the hell happened to the sky. I cannot believe a single thing that comes out of his mouth. I just don't believe him. And I don't, and you know why I also don't believe him? It's not just because I believe China over him. China's benefiting. China's winning this. China is getting inroads into places they had never dreamed of getting inroads into. You know who they're talking when all these other countries are sitting there talking about how they're going to get around Donald Trump's deranged tariff scheme that, he still doesn't even know who pays them. You know who's benefiting? China. China's the one stepping in. China's the one filling in the gap. Our GDP is getting smaller because of these tariffs. Guess whose isn't? Guess who's benefiting? So why would China agree when they're the ones that are winning this? This is like saying that the Philadelphia Eagles should have, were ready to concede in the fourth quarter of the Super Bowl. They were just ready. Okay, we can't win this one. As soon as, the Chiefs got their first touchdown, it was like, no. And it's Donald Trump hasn't even scored a touchdown. No, China's not conceding. They're winning. Why would they concede if they're winning? So that's why I don't believe you, Donald. You keep talking about all of these countries that are, talking to you. I have yet to see not only one deal, I haven't even seen one realistic offer. Other than, I think there were like a couple where both countries were just like, okay, 0 for 0. You don't tariff us, we won't tariff you. How's that? And that wasn't good enough for Trump. Because Trump doesn't understand anything at all. He understands less about economics than my cat does, and my cat is orange too. He has no idea what he's talking about. Let's stop pretending he's some sort of genius. Just because he was propped up by Fox Media to be some kind of fake giant. Like, he did not win the election. Like, there's so much nonsense with this. Trump didn't win the election. Fox News won the election. The right-wing media won the election by just bloviating first about how the inflation was all Biden's fault for 4 years, and then like never, ever, ever fact checking Trump on anything, and just whatever he said, like just, wow, I've never seen such genius. No, the people that they informed were misinformed. It is a fact. Go look at the exit polling. The more likely, the more disinformation you believed, the more likely you were to vote for Trump. No, Trump did not win this election. Disinformation won this election. And the disinformation specifically that was peddled by Fox News and other right-wing media outlets. So don't tell me that I need to believe Trump over China. I wouldn't believe Trump over Charles Manson. No.
Thank you very much for that question.
Hit the wrong file.
And then poor Pete. I mean, Mayor Pete is not exactly the one you send out to get the young bro crowd. I mean, you may as well send Dylan Mulvaney doing a makeup class and hope you can get more guys to watch.
It's funny how he thought like growing the beard would somehow change everything. It didn't.
Make us forget.
Okay, we got to talk about.
Who said growing a beard would change everything? And for that matter, I just want to point out that this guy, who is obviously wearing makeup, whose entire hair looks like it's makeup, who looks like he would lose a MMA match to Papa Smurf, this guy is telling a decorated war veteran about, like, manliness or whatever. They're just so nuts. What, did you just forget the part where he was like a war veteran? And he doesn't need to grow a beard like to prove he just grew a beard. He didn't grow a beard to change his stature with young men. Like, that is such a, like, they're so dumb and insane, and the people who watch it are even dumber and insaner. Oh my goodness, where would they get off thinking that, like, oh yeah, he grew a beard to, like, maybe his husband likes it, maybe he likes it. I grew a beard because I don't like shaving. Like, maybe he just doesn't like shaving. Maybe, it's a pain in the ass. You got to get up and you got to drag this razor across your face every morning. You know what? I don't have to do that anymore. Like, about once a week, I just take a trimmer and I, just to keep it close. Time to get rid of the neck beard here. But, it's not like this. I didn't go, oh, I want to be more manly, I'm going to grow a beard. Like, what kind of nonsense is that? Especially when you have shoe polish for hair. Yeah. So Joe's like, in my high five, Joe. It's like this. What about Ted Cruz? Ted Cruz grew a ferret on his face. And Pocket Brain says it's the style choice. Some people like the, in a way, I for a while I had this, especially if you look at, like in my profile, my little animated profile thing, I had it like kind of grown out a little bit more. It was like a lot bushier, and I paid a cartoon guy to do that, and I had a bushier beard back then. Yeah, I my wife told me she didn't like it, so I trimmed it down more. But like, this is just like criticizing. Why are you focused on his hair, his facial hair choices? Like, what is even the point of that? This is like, they're insane. You got Keg's Breath sitting there like sharing national secrets on Signal, And you're worried about Pete Buttigieg growing a beard? Look at this guy again.
Poor Pete. I mean, Mayor Pete is not exactly the.
This guy right here is the most manly person I've seen since, like, I don't know. Who's more manly than who's less? Here's the challenge. Tell me somebody less manly than Raymond Arroyo. It's like somebody took Pee Wee Herman and put shoe paw. I mean, Pee Wee Herman is more manly than this clown. And he's sitting there talking about a war veteran and questioning his manly. And they're always like, why are they always so just like stoked up about this kind of alpha male stuff, you know? Like, and then what they think of as being an alpha male is just like being a dickhead. So your criticism of Pete Buttigieg is he grew a beard and he's not a dickhead, so he's not appealing enough to dickheads. You know what he is? He's a genius. Like literally a genius. He's brilliant. Watch him talk. And he's always got this, I'm amazed by him because no matter how hostile the question is, he's always so calm and reasonable in his response. Not Pee Wee Herman there, but like Mayor Pete, Secretary Pete, hopefully someday President Pete. He's so calm and reasonable in his response, regardless of how hostile the question is. And I really respect that. And he's got reasons. He's got facts. He knows what he's talking about. And that's the real reason they're going after him, because they know he's a threat in 2028. And I haven't decided for sure who I want to, who I want to be in the White House in 2028 if I had my druthers, but he's on my short list. And like people are like, oh well, he's gay, so people won't vote for him. So there's like, if we take all that aside, and to some degree, I think that if we start just like not allowing people to run or not voting for people because they're gay or because they're a woman or because they're colored, because they're people of color, then we're just like them. We might as well be MAGA. Like, we can't just decide we need the straight cisgender white guy to run because the other half of the country won't ever vote for him. No, I'm not ready to concede that. Barack Obama won. If a black man can win, a gay man can win. And I'm not ready to concede that a woman can't win. And I'm not ready to give up on that fight. I am not going to be them to beat them, because then it doesn't matter who won anyway. But anyway, he would make a fantastic president. And that's why they're afraid of him. All right. Who are they going to vote for? Ted Cruz with his magnificent, foliage, face foliage? Come on. Even Ted Cruz's beard hates him. You can tell because it's always trying to escape.
What was that last result we put up from the Pew poll? Can we put up that last? Yes. Can Trump defy a Supreme Court ruling? 88% of the country says no, he cannot defy a Supreme Court ruling. Only 9% say yes, he can. And it's not the same thing, but I should mention that 9% is also 9%. 9% is also the proportion of Americans who told YouGov this week that they have a favorable view of the Black Plague. So that's the demographic we're working with here. 9% in favor of what Trump keeps hinting at, right? That he'll defy the courts and just become a full-on dictator. 9% also in favor of the Black Plague.
I just want to point out here, and I don't know what the actual poll said. There's 17% that's not accounted for. 9 plus 74 is 83. And any percent that's just like not automatically, yes, the president has to listen to the Supreme Court, is just like, you really have no idea what the history of our country, like, what the Constitution even says. What is the point of the Supreme Court if you can just ignore it?
Which killed 50% of the population of Europe. 9% of Americans think that's good.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Which killed 50%. And of
that 17% was people that were neutral on the Black Plague. So maybe they didn't know what the Black Plague was.
Of course, there's no reason to think those are the same 9% of people, but you do kind of wonder, don't you?
There, Michael Moore, I've got mixed feelings on him, but he used to have a show and it was funny. He would do these polls and he would be like, he would ask people if they were Democrat or Republican, and then he'd ask another series of questions. And then he would play with the numbers. And one of the questions one time was, are you a Democrat or Republican? And then the other question, they had a question on there, do you believe that Forrest Gump is a true story? And half of the Republicans in the audience believed that Forrest Gump was based on a true story. So anyway, you can have fun with numbers sometimes. And I bet half of Republicans believe that Forrest Gump was based on a true story because they saw the, footage of him in those historical contexts. All right. So, and then the last one is...
I just have a pro tip for any Democrats who are thinking about winning back the working class, those people who make under $100,000 a year, who a majority of whom voted for Trump. You should have a visceral disgust for someone like Larry David, who's worth $400 million, sitting there and sneering and smearing the hardest working Americans for refusing to co-sign their own disinheritance. That's effectively what they are doing when these millionaires come out here and call Trump Hitler. They are calling...
Okay. What the hell in the leap of logic are you talking about? Larry David wrote an opinion piece based on Bill Maher talking about how he went and he had his little dinner with Trump and said, oh, well, Trump was a nice person in person, right? And kind of soft pedaled Trump based on this dinner he had. So Larry David wrote a column called My Dinner with Adolf and talked about how, they, had this great time, and Adolf joked with another guy about how he shot his dog, and, if I can kill Jews, I can kill dogs too. And it was a parody piece, right? It had nothing whatsoever to do with working class people. And yes, if you're worth $400 million, you're still allowed to criticize the president, and criticizing the president does not equate to criticizing people that work less than $100,000. And you've got Elon Musk out there who's worth 10 times what Larry David is, or 100 times what Larry David is. You've got him going out there. He criticizes people like working class Americans. Where's your outrage there, silly Sally, or whatever your name is?
Working class Americans Nazis because they chose the person they thought would give their children back the future they were.
See, so if you disagree with Trump, you're basic. If you disagree with Trump's concentration camps or whatever, you're basically just insulting all the people who voted for him. But 4 years ago, or 2 years ago, if you insulted Biden, you didn't insult all the people that voted for him. More people voted for Biden than voted for Trump in either election. Trump didn't even get a majority of the votes. What about all of us who did not vote for Trump? Why is it you're insulting us by saying that insulting Trump is an insult to us?
Promised by this country, and it just has to stop. And you know what? Honestly,
it doesn't have to stop. It actually doesn't have to stop. What has to stop is your and your ilk's irresponsible defense of Trump, no matter what he does.
Democrats get this or don't, but they should get this because this is a big part of why they have lost, because they are
No, it's not a big part of why they have lost. We won in 2020. We barely lost in 2024. And I'm so tired of just this nonsensical, everything is why we lost. We lost because the media pushed the narrative that inflation was all Joe Biden's fault. That's the only reason we lost. Let's stop pretending that it's some other thing. It wasn't DEI. It wasn't, calling MAGAs Nazis. It was the relentless deluge of reports every single day that it suggested that inflation was Biden's fault. That was it. That was like 100%. That was it. The number one reason that people say they voted for Trump is the economy. And when they said the economy, they meant inflation. And they believed this drivel that Biden caused inflation. Nobody ever said how Biden caused inflation or what he did to cause inflation. There was no studies that showed it. It was just a steady deluge of this propaganda from both the right-wing media and the mainstream media that somehow Biden caused inflation, that it was his fault. It was not his fault. It was not his fault. There are, something like at worst, even if you look at the MAGA, think tanks, they say only 40% of it was his fault. But then they blame his spending package. But his spending package caused a lot more than 40. Like there was a net wage growth after inflation, right? But there was a lot of other reasons that inflation happened, and it wasn't Biden's fault. It started because of the supply chain shortages under COVID. That's why we had inflation. Everything else kind of accelerated from there. So stop with this is why Trump lost. Every time they want to make an argument, they're like, this is why Trump won. As though he won in this massive landslide. I am so sick of people just using this is why Trump won as a bludgeon.
They have these rich people. He is so wealthy. I mean,
he's so wealthy. He's worth 1% of what Elon Musk is. He's worth 1/10 of what Donald Trump claims to be. But sure, he's Jewish, and this is where it really kicks in.
They're all wealthy.
Donald Trump is a billionaire.
They're all wealthy. Yeah, all those Jewish people are wealthy.
But pardon the Camp Auschwitz guy. He had Nick Fuentes and Kanye West over for Thanksgiving dinner. He's not exactly Nazi averse.
He's also the father-in-law and grandfather of Jewish children. Come on.
Yeah, he is the father and grandfather of Jewish children. He's not the father of Jewish children. He's the father-in-law of a Jewish child. But that doesn't mean that he can't be a Nazi. That doesn't mean he can't be a fascist. That doesn't mean that he's not literally starting a concentration camp in El Salvador for brown people. Let's stop acting like because Jared Kushner exists, he can't be a Nazi.
Trump has done more for Jewish people.
Trump has not done a thing for Jewish people. And these are the same people that say this crap that will sit there and talk about George Soros being the one person that pays for every single person who ever protests anything about Trump. The most anti-Semitic people in the country are the ones who defend Trump's anti-Semitism, which is constant. Remember when he had the little Star of David advertisement when he was running against Hillary Clinton? Come on. Let's act. What has he done for the Jewish people? I remember when a synagogue got shot up because of his rhetoric. So stop telling me how he's defending Jewish people. I have Jewish family. They don't agree. So stop with that.
Sicilian who grew up with Jewish people around me. He is fantastic. Okay, you know what? Actions speak louder than words. He may have said something.
Yeah. actions do speak louder than
down
words.
on Harvard with their anti-Semitic
That is
policies.
a lie. It's not you know it's not about anti.
Okay, and then so then they've always got to lean into the oh, you defended Gaza's right to, like, not be murdered. Like, if you are like, stop murdering Gazans, that means you're anti-Semitic. They cannot have a logically honest conversation about Gaza. They cannot have a logically honest conversation about anti-Semitism. All they do is just spew lies and hate.
Look at how Harvard has treated Alan Dershowitz, who was there for 50 years.
Alan Dershowitz has punched his own ticket.
Alan Dershowitz can't take his mouth off of Donald Trump's testicles long enough. Let's not bring up Alan Dershowitz. Anyway. Okay, so I missed a comment earlier from Joe. Should we have disobeyed the SCOTUS when they didn't disqualify Trump as an insurrectionist? Right? Like, if you want to just say, you know what? Thanks for your input, Supreme Court. We're going to send him to jail anyway. In fact, we're going to escalate. We're going to speed up the trial to make sure that this traitor doesn't get back in the White House. Why? Why did they not do that? Because they respect the Supreme Court's decisions, even when they're obviously wrong. So stop with this, insanity of, oh yeah, it's okay to avoid the Supreme Court. And you hear them go, oh, they're always talking about left-wing judges appointed by Biden and Obama. They were democratically elected judges. Or they were democratically elected presidents who appointed judges that were approved by democratically elected senates. You don't get to decide later that in that case, democracy didn't matter. And in this case, you have to listen to the plurality of voters that voted for Trump and just, put all your values in a box and pretend they never existed. So anyway, that is my rant for today. And I thank you for joining me. Happy weekend. I'm not planning on posting much of anything this weekend on YouTube, but I do want to announce that tomorrow, for those of you who have been following my little saga on getting paid, I just have an update. As of this, there's tomorrow I start getting ad revenue. I'll just put it that way. There's been some confusion about how the hours are counted and stuff like that. But as of this morning, you have to get to 4,000 hours of ad revenue or of watch time before you get you qualify for ad revenue. And as of this morning, I'm at 3,979 hours. But that's even like the official time runs like 4 days behind regular time, right? So tomorrow morning at 4:30 a.m., I will officially hit with YouTube 4,000 hours of official watch time and start getting ad revenue. So I thank you guys so very, very much for watching my video, because starting tomorrow, I'll be getting paid. So that's pretty awesome. I'm pretty happy about that. I read like only a tiny percentage of of YouTubers ever get paid at all, and especially like apparently political podcasts are not like the most lucrative. But hey, it's what I know, it's what I love, and I'm hoping I can make a difference this way. And so getting paid will help, because if I can support myself doing this, that means I can devote more time, more energy into this, and hopefully educate people with things like Joe Biden didn't cause inflation. Anyway, thank you, Debbie. I appreciate that you are happy about that. So anyway, that's it. Happy weekend. Enjoy your weekend, unless you don't actually have a weekend, because not everybody does. All right. I appreciate you guys. I'll talk to you later. And don't forget to look for the slideshows on immigration rights.